On this Wednesday night, accusations of a cover-up. What a new treasure trove of documents into the We Charity deal reveals and doesn't reveal.
Another email all blacked out.
Plus, the fresh scrutiny the Prime Minister faces with Parliament on pause. West Coast wildfires, BC's ballooning blaze.
There's so many houses up there and it was just racing down the hills.
And California's catastrophe during a blistering heat wave. The historic night for the Democrats in Delaware. Our Jackson Prosco is there. And when push came to shove, new evidence into what started this courtside confrontation.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Sophie Louie.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with accusations of a cover-up in Ottawa, with new details emerging in the We Charity controversy, just as Parliament is proroguing. Late yesterday, the government finally released thousands of pages of internal records linked to the now cancelled We agreement. But with Parliament now prorogued until late September, the committees investigating the proposed contract can't formally review them, as they've been shut down. Conservatives say it's clear the Prime Minister has something to hide.
This page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. Why don't we ask what's in those pages at a parliamentary committee? Well, I'll tell you why. Justin Trudeau shut down those parliamentary committees. When did he do it? The same day these documents became public. What a coincidence.
Well, some of the documents are redacted, but there are still some key new revelations about how the We deal came together. Global's Abigail Bimman has more on what we've learned and the questions that are still unanswered.
At the center of this controversy, a big question: how close was We to the government? And why didn't they register to lobby until the very day executives testified at committee? In a May 7th email, a finance official writes, We is connecting with Morneau, that's the minister's office. They are all besties. While the enormous document trove backs up the government's assertion that the public service recommended We,
the professional, nonpartisan public service, made a recommendation, I accepted it.
They suggest the minister responsible, Bardish Chagger, helped shepherd the process. According to emails, Chagger met with We on April 17th. 2 days later, an Employment and Social Development Canada official sent an urgent email to We co-founder Craig Kielburger asking for a quick conversation on a potential initiative. And on April 22nd, Kielburger wrote Chagger, We appreciate your thoughtful offer to connect us with relevant members of your ministry. Over the weekend, our team has also been hard at work to adapt your suggestion of a second stream focused on a summer service opportunity. Chagger pushed back, telling Global News she didn't direct We to change or add to any proposal. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister said repeatedly he pressed pause on the We deal on May 8th because he wanted more due diligence done.
Let's put the brakes on. Let's check. Let's go do extra verifications.
But on that very day, a note from a bureaucrat suggests a different reason. Rachel Wernick wrote, The item just got bumped to next week. Ran out of time. Delays launch. Trudeau's office tells us they stand by his testimony. And there have been a lot of questions about where that $900 million number for the student grant program came from. 3 weeks after it was announced, a finance official wrote, There is no breakdown. It was unbelievably preliminary, with actually no model of how it would be administered, while the assistant deputy minister referred to the loosey-goosey logic used to come up with it. The lobbying commissioner tells us they've launched a preliminary assessment, but won't comment as to whether an investigation is underway, while the RCMP stepped up their language in a new statement, telling Global News they're examining this matter carefully and will take appropriate actions as required. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
All right, let's bring in our Ottawa Bureau Chief, Mercedes Stevenson. Mercedes, let's talk about that RCMP statement. What do you make of it?
Well, Sophie, that's the question. What does it mean? And for our viewers, I wanted to share exactly what it is that we asked the RCMP. We asked if they could confirm whether they're investigating the Liberal government's decision to award a contract to the We Charity Foundation and to administer that $900 million federal student grant program. their response is carefully worded but stronger than before. They say the RCMP is examining this matter carefully with all available information and will take appropriate actions as required. It would be inappropriate for us to provide any more further comments on this matter at this time. Now, Sophie, that does not mean that they have launched a criminal investigation, but it does mean that they're taking a look to decide if this is something they should move forward with. And that obviously is a development, especially after the RCMP were asked to investigate by the Conservatives. Of course, the police don't respond to any political party. They make their own decisions.
All right, you've been poring over these documents as well, Mercedes. What other questions do they raise?
Well, questions that we really won't get an answer to with the proroguing of Parliament, because the committees have been suspended that were looking at these documents. Questions about ministerial involvement, like you just heard about in Abigail's story. Questions about whether ministers were honest at committees, whether any of the lobbying that was happening was potentially illegal, and of course questions about Bill Morneau, who's now departed. All of this has been shut down, which stops the momentum and takes the pressure off the government. That's been a tried and true formula for former prime ministers in trouble who have also used prorogation as a technique to take the heat off, including Prime Minister Harper and Prime Minister Chrystia. What's unique about this is that we're not talking about proroguing during a majority, but rather a minority and during a pandemic. That said, it's not for very long, and the government promises a confidence vote.
So is there a risk, Mercedes, of bringing down the government and perhaps triggering an election?
There's always a risk, but frankly, the risk to the Liberals at this point is low, as long as they can keep one of the opposition parties on board because of the way the breakdown is in the House of Commons. The most likely to stay on board is Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, and a lot of the language that was used yesterday by the government signals they're looking at significant spending. I asked Mr. Singh today about whether or not what is revealed in these wee documents that now can't be examined at committee until the fall has changed his mind on whether or not he'll support the government. This is what he had to say.
We look at the question of confidence or not. Our focus is on what do people need right now. And what I'm hearing from people, from families, they want to know that their kids can go back to school safely. They want access to childcare. They want to know that they're going to be able to rely on something like CERB or EI that's expanded. Those are the pressing things, and I want to focus on that.
Doesn't sound like a party leader looking to bring down the government, but of course it'll depend on what they can negotiate with the Liberals. Sophie?
All right, Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Thank you, Mercedes. Well, taking over as finance minister of a G7 economy is a tall order for anyone under any circumstances. But taking on the role during a pandemic adds a whole new set of challenges. New figures out today show Canada's inflation rate has slowed. The Consumer Price Index fell to 0.1% in July, with lower prices for gas and air travel dragging that number down. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, has been sizing up the situation and reports on the task facing the country's new finance minister.
The economic challenge created by the coronavirus.
Chrystia Freeland begins her historic tenure with economics and politics stacked against her. An unemployment rate not seen in 25 years, with more than 1 in 10 workers out of a job. A sky-high deficit projected to hit an all-time record of more than $340 billion. And with a recent credit rating downgrade, Canada's lenders are skeptical.
I think the most important thing to say is to be bold. This is not a time for half measures.
Indeed, both Freeland and the Prime Minister hinted on Tuesday that their plan will in fact contain bold measures with a green environmental theme.
There's going to be enormous pressure on her, clearly, from her colleagues, particularly her boss, to spend a lot more.
Now layer on the tricky politics that comes with a minority government already taking on water over the We Charity scandal, and the pressure on Freeland is even greater.
We're in a global pandemic. We're in recessionary times. Canadians are worried about paying the bills, feeding their families, and Justin Trudeau is completely preoccupied with the scandals.
For Freeland to succeed and return Canada to prosperity, the country has to get back to work.
So let's make sure the spending that we're going to be incurring is about building confidence in this economy and getting people back to work, not giving them incentives to stay at home.
But how do you make the change from the CERB to a new employment insurance system that will support a return to work in a time of pandemic?
lots of Canadians' incomes are going to be dependent on how she and her colleagues deal with that challenge.
Women and minorities are disproportionately unemployed, and that means Freeland will have to keep spending to help those groups back to work. And that inevitably means more money for childcare.
Now is really the time to deliver because our economic recovery depends on it. So that's, the first step.
The next step, though, comes September 23rd, a throne speech that will have Freeland's roadmap for economic recovery. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
The new Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is inheriting a troubling financial situation too, and today Andrew Furey was sworn into his new role. Furey, a surgeon and charity CEO with no political experience, must tackle a $2.1 billion deficit due to plummeting oil prices and pandemic spending. To help with a fresh start, the new Premier unveiled his cabinet, adding 3 new faces. He says he's optimistic about the province's potential, but acutely aware of the challenges that lie ahead.
We're in tough times, but we'll get out of it together as long as we all work together. Every single person in this province has a role to play in the recovery that's going to happen over the next few years.
Furey must win a seat in the legislature within the next 12 months. He says he intends to run for the next available seat. It's going to be a nervous night for people living in parts of British Columbia. Wildfires are raging out of control in the province's interior and on Vancouver Island. Nearly 90 wildfires have started in the past 2 days, many of them likely caused by dry lightning strikes earlier this week. Many of those fires are in the Okanagan Valley and in the Kootenay region, and the wildfire risk remains high or extreme throughout the southern portion of the province. One fire near Penticton grew so quickly it engulfed 10 square kilometers in just a matter of hours. Global BC's Aaron MacArthur is on the ground in the Okanagan, where nearly 3,700 properties are under evacuation alert. Aaron.
Sophie, cooler temperatures today. It's giving crews a chance to hopefully get a handle on this fire. But last night, bad news. At least one home destroyed by flames.
It's terrifying to watch. The raging fire clearly visible to people in Penticton. People here are ready for the fire season. Evacuation orders still filled with emotion.
There's so many houses up there and it was just racing down the hill, so we'll see if we have a house in the days to come.
All logged off in behind there. If it gets into those plantations and the dry grass, it's really going to spread. And this wind isn't going to help.
The terrain, rocky and steep, difficult for ground crews to make any progress. Wednesday, a parade of helicopters dipped in Skaha Lake, bucketing a section of the fire right on top of dozens of homes. For at least one homeowner, it's too late. The home destroyed overnight by flames.
Now is the time to make sure you have a plan for your family and your pets so that you don't have a situation where someone's knocking on the door and you're saying, I'm not ready to go.
The fire has continued to spread. The BC Wildfire Service pins the size at about 1,400 hectares and continuing to grow. The fight to save homes a long way from being finished.
This fire is far from contained. It means hundreds of people will not likely be going home anytime soon, and thousands of people ready to go at a moment's notice. Sophie?
Aaron MacArthur in BC for us. Thank you, Aaron. California's wine country is dealing with its own wildfire emergency. Thousands have been told there is an immediate threat to their lives. Several thousand homeowners in the city of Vacaville, west of Sacramento, have been ordered to leave. The governor declared a state of emergency for all of California as multiple blazes incinerate at least 18,000 hectares of land in the Napa and Sonoma valleys. An even larger complex of fires is burning around the San Francisco Bay Area, and smoke is covering much of central and northern California. It's believed most of the fires were caused by lightning storms on the heels of record-breaking hot weather. The mission to vote out Donald Trump. Coming up, Democrats and even some Republicans on why Joe Biden should be America's next president. It'll be a moment for the history books in the U.S. tonight at the Democratic National Convention as Kamala Harris accepts her nomination for vice president in the race to unseat President Donald Trump. Our Jackson Prosco joins us from Wilmington, Delaware, presidential candidate Joe Biden's home base. Jackson, what are we expecting from the convention tonight?
Well, Sophie, tonight's convention will focus on threats to the American Constitution and American way of life. Former President Barack Obama is set to speak from Philadelphia, outlining what he calls the grave choice facing American voters. While here in Wilmington, Kamala Harris will address the history being made by including her on a presidential ticket.
At this unconventional convention, a few socially distanced delegates will watch Kamala Harris make history when she speaks as the first woman of color to be a vice presidential candidate. Harris takes the stage on a night that will include speeches from former President Barack Obama and former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, all of them making the case for why Joe Biden should be president. 32 years after he mounted his first attempt at a presidential campaign, Biden officially became his party's nominee on Tuesday.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
After a night that saw a 50-state virtual roll call and an impassioned speech to Americans from his wife, Jill Biden.
He will do for your family what he did for ours. Bring us together and make us whole.
The United States of America. This first-of-its-kind convention has focused on made-for-TV moments, aimed at selling Biden as a compassionate, competent, and experienced candidate, not too extreme and uniquely suited to this era of crisis. Endorsements have come from Republicans, too, like former Secretary of State Colin Powell, even as Biden opens the door to the party's growing progressive wing.
And the fact is, everybody wants to get to the same place. Our country is in a very serious, even existential crisis, and we need a very different president.
When Biden delivers his own address on Thursday from that same stage, it will be to a party united.
Jackson, you talked about made-for-TV moments. With this being a virtual convention, are people still tuning in and paying attention?
Yeah, Sophie, nearly 30 million viewers tuned in last night between TV and online. The TV ratings are down about 25% from the last convention 4 years ago. Online interest, though, has gone through the roof, and that's why you're seeing this convention rolled out in these quick-moving segments, which are easily shared through social media.
All right, thanks for that, Jackson Prosco in Wilmington, Delaware. Well, many are likely using their Apple devices to tune into the convention. The tech giant reached a huge milestone today. Apple has become the first U.S. company to be worth $2 trillion. To put their success into perspective, it took Apple 42 years to reach a value of $1 trillion. That was in August of 2018. It took only 2 more years to get to $2 trillion. Even more interesting, Apple's second trillion came in just the past 21 weeks, while the global economy shrank due to the pandemic. Customers continued to purchase products online in record numbers while stores were closed. Apple shares have soared almost 60% this year and are at an all-time high, trading at $470 a share. Ahead, giving Alberta an economic boost during the pandemic. The new finance minister's commitment to a green economic recovery is very much at odds with the strategy out west. Alberta's restart has put resource development front and center, not only with investment into the oil and gas sector, but with new efforts to attract investment in coal mining. Heather Urix-West explains.
In its foothills and Rocky Mountains, Alberta's government sees an opportunity for economic growth.
We have in Canada a very strong coal industry. A lot of it is metallurgical coal, or sometimes called steel-making coal, which is really required to make steel.
Until now, most of Canada's steel-making coal has come from BC. The Alberta government is trying to get into the game, removing restrictions last month that have banned open pit mines in many sensitive areas of the province since the 1970s.
That protected about 1.5 million hectares of sensitive Rocky Mountain habitat. This area is not just important for habitat for fish and wildlife, but it is also the source water for most of Alberta and downstream into the prairies.
Ottawa has committed to phasing out the use of thermal coal, the kind used to produce electricity, by 2030. It will have to decide whether it supports new steel-making coal developments when the proposed Grassy Mountain Coal Project in southwest Alberta comes up for federal approval later this year.
I think all Canadians understand that the restart of our economy needs to be green.
The new finance minister's comments Wednesday that environmental interests will be a priority moving forward have already sparked concern. A spokesperson for the Alberta Premier said Wednesday, "We are concerned that in the middle of this uncertainty, some in Ottawa seem more interested in risky and expensive economic experiments. Any talk of economic recovery is incomplete without Canada's energy sector, an industry that has taken a massive hit this year."
The oil and gas industry is ready to step up and do our part in pulling us out of this situation. And to do it in a way that's environmentally responsible is certainly a challenge that we're up for.
It's a balancing act that has not been easy for Ottawa in the past, and it won't get any easier under the impact of COVID-19. Heather Yurex, West Global News, Calgary.
Courtside Countersuit. Next, new video plays in favor of the Raptors' role in an NBA battle. And there's a big development in a legal battle involving Raptors president Masai Ujiri. For more than a year, he has faced accusations he assaulted a sheriff's deputy after last year's championship game. But new video has emerged telling a very different story. Footage from the deputy's body camera shows Ujiri trying to get onto the court to celebrate when the deputy forcefully shoves him twice before Ujiri pushes back. The deputy, Alan Strickland, says Ujiri assaulted him after he tried to stop Ujiri because he didn't see the proper credentials. That deputy has since sued Ujiri, claiming the alleged assault caused him great emotional and physical pain. He's seeking nearly $100,000 in damages plus other compensation. In a countersuit filed this week, Ujiri's lawyers call Strickland's lawsuit frivolous and motivated by greed. They say the video shows Strickland was undeniably the initial aggressor. Raptors head coach Nick Nurse responded to the video.
To me, it's pretty self-explanatory, and disappointing. It's been a long time. It's been over a year, right? So it's good to kind of maybe get close to some closure on that.
Global News reached out to the sheriff's office for comment. They say the video released doesn't tell the full story. That's Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Sophie Louis. Tonight's Your Canada is from Saskatchewan's Prince Albert National Park. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.